Using a roller nut on a guitar is a great way to improve your guitar's performance, especially if you're using a non-locking tremolo like a Fender style tremolo or a Bigsby tremolo. Or maybe you're a aggressive string bender, or maybe you have an aggressive trilling technique. All of those actions have a tendency to turn your strings into tiny little saws. So what ends up happening over time, and it can be a fairly short period of time, is that your strings, because they're moving back and forth in the slot, they will eat away at the bottom of the slot, thereby deepening the slot, and eventually the strings will wind up sitting on top of your first couple of frets, and at that point you need to replace the nut. But using a roller nut will eliminate that because the rollers act as sort of a mechanical form of lubrication. The strings are actually gliding back and forth on the rollers as they turn while you're playing. And that reduces the potential for string breakage, it improves tuning stability, and it extends the life of the nut. However, you have to install it correctly in order for it to work properly. And if you don't install it correctly, as I'm about to demonstrate, it could cause all kinds of problems for your guitar. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop on the computer and I'm going to show you some illustrations which will explain what I'm trying to talk about here. What we're looking at in this illustration is a side view of the guitar neck, the fretboard, the first three frets, the nut, and a line which represents the strings. And for this demonstration, I'm going to use a scale length of 25.5 inches or 647.7 millimeters. For this particular scale length, the distance between the face of the nut and the center of the top of the first fret is 1.431 inches or 36.4 millimeters. This distance will vary depending on scale length, but for a 25.5 inch scale length, this is what it is. Now, if we isolate the nut, and I'm talking about either a bone nut or a synthetic nut, the face of the nut, and we're looking at a side view of the nut here, the face of the nut represents what is known as the point of contact. That's where the guitar string first makes contact with the nut on the bridge side of the nut. And this is where the start of the scale length begins. Since the start of the scale length is at the point of contact, that's why we measure the distance to the first fret from the face of the nut. A roller nut, however, has its point of contact at the top center of the rollers themselves. It's not at the face of the nut, and this is where people can make a mistake when it comes to installing a roller nut. If we overlay a roller nut on top of a traditional nut and line up the faces, we can see that the point of contact for the roller nut shifts back towards the headstock by 0.125 inches or 3.25 millimeters. So what that means is that if you install the roller nut so that the face is in the same position as the face of a traditional nut, you're going to shift the point of contact closer to the headstock, thereby slightly lengthening the scale length of the guitar. And that means all of your frets are going to be in the wrong position. And what that means is the distance from the point of contact on the nut to the top center of the first fret being 1.431 inches or 36.4 millimeters is actually going to be 1.556 inches or 37.9 millimeters. And that means the scale length has gotten slightly longer and the frets are no longer in the correct position. And even though you can tune the strings as long as they're tuned open, as soon as you press the strings down to the frets, the notes that you're trying to play are going to be slightly out of tune. Therefore, in order to position the roller nut correctly, you have to place the top center of the roller right where the face of the traditional nut would be, or exactly 1.431 inches, 36.4 millimeters, from the top center of that first fret. Then you'll be assured that you've got the nut in the best position possible in order to tune and intonate the guitar correctly. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, you can show your support by clicking the thumbs up button down below. It's free to do. You can also click the subscribe button, which is also free. And when you do that, you can click the bell for notifications. That way you'll never miss any future content. But if you want to take your support to the next level, you can click the thanks button and leave a tip in the amount that you think is fair. Or you can click the join button or the subscribe plus button and become a member of my channel. And as a member, you're going to be able to enjoy videos just like the one you're watching, but with much more detail, and best of all, no ads. Now let's get back to the video. Now it's important to understand that there are a lot of different designs as far as roller nuts are concerned. And in this video, I'm not talking about the Fender FSR style roller nut. That's a whole different type of nut. I'm talking about the ones that have these tiny little rollers. And while their designs may be slightly different, the basic concept is the same. So regardless of which one you purchase, you got to measure the distance between that top center of the roller and the face of the nut so that you can position it correctly. But the position isn't the only thing you need to be concerned with. There's also the issue of the radius. And you may not realize it when you look at it, but there is a gradual radius that has been formed by the placement of the rollers in the nut. And when I was doing research for this video, I shopped for a lot of guitar nuts. And what I found was most of the roller nuts seem to have about the same radius, which is 330 millimeters. And I think that comes out to something like 12.9 inches. Obviously, you want to have a radius for the nut that matches the radius of your fretboard. But if your guitar has, a 10-inch radius or even a 9.5 or 12-inch or whatever radius it is, you may be a little bit concerned about using one of these nuts that has a 330 millimeter or 12.9-inch radius. However, they do usually have a provision for adjusting the height of the nut. And some of the roller nuts that you'll find have a single screw in the center. It's usually an Allen type hex screw that you can adjust to raise or lower the bridge. I prefer ones that have the adjustment screw on either end. So you actually have two adjustment screws. And this will allow you to raise or lower each end independently of the other. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get the radius exactly perfect to match the radius of your fretboard, but you can get pretty close. And I think for a lot of people, that's good enough. Now, for some of you who are hypersensitive to those sort of measurements, you may find that a roller nut with a 330 millimeter radius or 12.9-inch radius isn't going to be suitable in your situation, which means you're not going to be able to use a roller nut. Now, you could probably shop around and see if you can find roller nuts that come in different radiuses, but I so far haven't really been able to find them. And in fact, a lot of the nuts that are advertised, they don't even tell you what the radius is. So you kind of have to guess at what it's going to be. But like this nut that I purchased, this is a Geiger titanium roller nut, and their website says it's a 330 millimeter or 12.9-inch radius. So I'm confident that'll work. Now, the beauty of it is I build guitars from scratch, so I can actually produce a radius for the fretboard that's going to match the radius of the nut, which is exactly what I'll do. But if you're swapping a nut into an existing guitar, you may not have that luxury. Well, I bet you didn't realize there was so much to consider when it comes to installing one of these tiny little roller nuts. It's got to be done correctly, otherwise it's not going to work right. At any rate, I hope you found this video to be useful. If so, move your cursor or your finger down there and click that little thumbs up button. Do it right now. It doesn't cost you anything and it really helps to support my channel. Also, it tells YouTube what kind of videos you like to watch. So they're going to populate your feed on YouTube with videos that match your interests. And oftentimes you're going to see videos that you didn't even know exist. And of course, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can do some of the things I mentioned earlier in this video. And until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for more of these guitar building videos.